Okay, welcome back. Just to recap there, we used the lingual bar as this inferior portion of our major connector lingual apron. I've put on the mesh lattice retention with 22 gauge wax underneath. I'm proceeding now to fill in and join the 20 gauge wax neatly, strengthening the junction between the major connector and the lattice structure on a bit of a 45, and then I'm going to add my tissue stop. And I'll proceed to do the other side. As you can see from the side here, if I can zoom in just a bit, it's just slightly above. It's just slightly above. I'm envisioning the denture saddle going way below that free end denture base. I'm going to fill in one in the corner here. As you can see, so now it's somewhat symmetrical. And then fill in the guide plane of the distal of 3-4 and 4-4 here. Last section here, you need to get some retentive arms. And in this case, we're using a cast arm. I've got my pattern, I've got my ledge that's 0.25 millimeters below the height of contour. So I can place my retentive arm directly on my ledge. Now, to make it easier trimming, please do not seal this. It should adhere to the model really well. And the thickness of the clasp might be the maximum thickness of the guide plane. Do not make it any bigger than the width of the clasp. We still need to sneak in a prosthetic tooth 3-5 and 4-5 here, nice and neatly, to butt up against 3-4 and 4-4. So there we have one retentive arm. And now we'll do the other side here. Some of you are kind of using a really skinny part of the clasp. I'll tend to use the thicker part to make it a little bit more robust. And then I'll take the end off, which is a little bit thin, as you can see here. Be really careful not to leave a barb at the end. And then my clasp, I'm using the thicker part of the profile. I'm keeping in mind now polishing, deplating, sandblasting, casting. So I know that that is going, if I start off with something thin, through all those processes, I'll end up with almost like hardly anything left. This circle got a little bit damaged, so I'll just pretend that it didn't. I'll add some wax there. Now, pretty straightforward as the previous wax ups. We're starting off with some basics with some repetitive procedures to kind of reinforce what we've done already before we depart and do something different. And if you wish, be really careful again. You can smooth that all off with a little alcohol torch, very, very, very carefully, gently. Now, the next step here is I'm going to create the finishing line, the external finishing line. So I'm going to get my 22 gauge wax. I'm going to go straight down from the guide plane, straight down with a little bit of a distal turn, if you can look at it from this occlusal view. Many laboratories or framework laboratories or design will depart slightly. The whole idea here is that we don't have one finishing line on top of the other to weaken the structure. It might be premature for us to kind of cognitively understand that at this stage, but you will see once we've casted that they are offset, my internal and external. I'm sealing just the mesial side of the 20 gauge wax, careful to maintain the profile and thickness that's creating an undercut for the acrylic. And the undercut of the acrylic will go right underneath this 20 gauge wax, and this will be the junction point between my acrylic and metal denture base. And finish line on the other side. This is going to go a little bit longer than the bar at the bottom. As you can see, this is going to give me some freedom to trim and freedom to shorten it or keep it, maintain that length to see how far down my denture base will go into the internal oblique ridge sulcus area or the junction of the detached and attached mucosa of the lingual side. So, kind of similar procedures. Just flattened my guide plane out there. I didn't want it too thick. If you've gone too far buckle with the guide plane, you can go back in here and trim it. I'm taking a little bit of the mesh retention here. I know this is going to interfere with my prosthetic number 5, so I'll just take it out of the way now. And this is where we're going to depart. There's something new here that we're going to add on to when we do the maxillary partial dentures. You all have a stippled pattern as such, and you can see there's a smooth side and the stippled pattern side. Stippled pattern side. So I'm going to, guesstimate the size of this. And I've got the stippled pattern side, the textured side towards me. And these come in different textures and different veins and different sizes, thicknesses. And I've chosen here the 0.6, I think, for us. Excuse me, the 0.35. The 0.35 millimeter. Now, I've put it on such a way, if I really try to push this on now, it's going to thin out. So what I might want to do is maybe create a little, because it's on a bit of a arc, a bit of a turn. It's almost like putting the light cure sheets on. I want to cover right from external finishing line to external finishing line. And now the most important point here is to cover above the cingulums of the anterior teeth. Really putting this on. So my apron will be about 0.35 millimeters thickness, right at the incisal edge of my bicuspid, above the cingulum of the 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, and above the height of contour on 4. And I can take this off. I could have done a better job, I guess, the joint here between the two. And just like the first project, surgerize the 20 gauge wax together with the stippling, creating a thicker external finishing line and maintaining the integrity of the finishing line. Don't damage it, don't thin it, don't cut it. Practice cutting the two at the same time. Now I've come a little bit too mesial with that, so I'm going to go back and cut it again. And then also underneath, right up to the inferior part of where that lingual bar was, you can clean up this extra wax here. Now, last step is this sheet is on here, but we really have to seal all the edges all the way around. We have to trap this wax up, so there's no investment getting underneath the stippled pattern. Got a little bit thin on me here. That's going to be a tricky area there, just on the distal lingual of 3, because it has to stretch from 4. And then I'm going to be really careful and seal the edge here. And I'm not really adding any wax. I'm using the stippled pattern itself, thickness, to seal the apron down. And this incisal edge, or the superior border of this lingual apron, will be like really sharp here. I added a little bit there on the 3. Tricky area here coming up to the rest. I'll have to thicken it up a little bit. Now we're going to have a polished border around this apron, the whole top of it and underneath, and then maintain the stippled section. The whole border meaning the top, the finishing lines, and underneath will be highly polished smooth. And then I'm going to just use the same wax as the stippled pattern wax to heat up, and use that itself to seal it to the bar. I don't have to add any more here. If you choose to add more, then you'll go back with your scalpel and clean it up. or your carver, as I'm going to do here. I've got a little extra debris here. I'm going to trim above the height of contour on my 4. I've got a little excess on the canine I'm going to relieve. Shape my rest. Excess on the lateral, nice and sharp. Central, nice and sharp. You can see the wax that I'm just scraping off ever so gently is excess. I've got an issue here on my 3, which I think I'm going to fill in. And that's going to be challenging now that I've put that much on there. So I'll just have to blend in my wax up here. And then remove above the height of contour of my bicuspid and the guide plane here. If you notice, the clasp comes right up to the shoulder of the clasp comes right up to the below the marginal ridge. A lot of you on the first one were leaving the tooth on these G clasps exposed, meaning the marginal ridge was a lot higher. The clasp has to originate from above the height of contour. It's a super bulge clasp, then to below the height of contour. I'm going to clean up my finishing line here. A little bit sloppy. And normally I would do that under the magnification, whether it's just easier for me to see because I'm getting old, or it does really produce a better wax up. You can see more blemishes in your wax up. So I'll take this under the magnification. I'll shape my tissue stops, which is a lot easier in wax than it is with a carbide disc or carbon disc. And clean up the wax up. No alcohol torch now. We don't want to ruin the integrity of the stippling. The last thing is to sprue it, and we'll sprue it exactly as the last one, the same 2 places. Okay, so I hope that helps. I'll be around to help everybody out if you need be, as well as everyone else. Don't be hard on yourself. This is maybe your first or second time. So your expectations, as mine are realistic for your achievement. Although if we're just waiting around for it to occur itself, then that's not a positive result you won't end up with. We need to plod forward and make some errors. And then try not to repeat them next time around. Okay, thank you.